fall of this year, but they're excited and they're proud. They're jazzed to have their mom running for office.
That's great. And I saw that you were recently endorsed by Emily's List, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you talk about what those sorts of endorsements mean for a campaign?
Sure. So the endorsement process it can be rigorous depending on the organization that is issuing the endorsement. They send out lengthy surveys describing, asking you to describe your positions. And what it means for a campaign is that you receive the support of that organization. And that can mean anything from social media posts to volunteers on the ground to a consultant who helps coach you on aspects of your campaign. And in some cases, it includes monetary support, but in general, it's support in helping get the word out about your campaign and sending volunteers your way, which is really exciting because that's how this race in my district is going to be won, is by getting out the vote and having the voters in this district know that this year is critical for them to vote, because it's off year cycle and people tend not to vote in those, and we really need to get people out.
What are some of the other endorsements that you've received?
I am very proud to have received endorsements from Equality NC and MECPAC, which are the two LGBTQ organizations in North Carolina. I've also received the Black Political Caucus, as well as the Southern Piedmont Central Label Council and the Mecklenburg County Educators Association. And also there is a great PAC called Our Shot NC, and they are for North Carolina candidates who are first-time candidates and who need a little jump start in getting their campaign off the ground.
You talked a little bit about gun violence prevention, obviously, and education. Are there other issues that are really driving your campaign?
Sure. So in North Mecklenburg County, there is a lake called Lake Norman. And on Lake Norman, there is an energy plant. And as part of that energy plant, there is coal ash. And there are coal ash ponds around there that have been leaking into our groundwater here and contaminating our water with trace amounts of radiation and other harmful chemicals. And so for me, as a person who cares about our environment and our natural resources, I want to keep the power company on the hook for what they're doing to our water, and our drinking water comes from this lake. And I want to make sure that they aren't allowed to just let these things slide by and then pass the recovery expense on to the consumers of energy in our state. And so that's a really big, important issue for me.
Is there anything else that you want to be sure that our listeners know about you or about North Carolina?
So North Carolina has been in the national media for a lot of negative reasons in past years because of our GOP-led legislature. And so around the country, people have a really negative opinion of our state. And I think that is a tragedy. And that's one of the reasons that I'm running for office, is because our state is amazing. We are really a mixture. We have 50-50 of Democrats and Republicans in this state. We have beautiful natural resources. We have loving and kind people that care about our education and our environment and each other, and really appreciate diversity. And so that's what I'm running on as a candidate. And I want other people around our state and country to know that North Carolina is a welcoming place and someone they can come and visit and feel safe and enjoy all we have to offer.
That's excellent. I've only spent a little bit of time in North Carolina, but I remember it being a really beautiful place. And I'm so glad, talking to people around the country, to realize that people really love where they live and they don't want to give up the places they live to go somewhere else where the politics might be better, that instead they want to stay and fight.
Yeah, that's right. And my husband and I have often say to people say, oh, I can't come there, I don't want to move there, because the politics are, so unstable or so unfavorable. And I always tell them, no, don't do that. Come here and vote and help us change what the politics are in Raleigh so that we can turn North Carolina back around to the state that it used to be, where our public school system and our university system was well known as being top notch. And they still are. They just need more resources. You can go to the beach here, and it's my favorite place on earth is the North Carolina beach, and enjoy what we have here, but also come here and vote and help us turn things around.
All right, so you're saying I should leave Chicago and
Yes.
move to another state.
Yes. If you, especially about the weather, I mean, we don't have snow like you have in Chicago here, but we have beautiful springs and beautiful falls, and the lake water is always warm in the summer. And so it's a great place to be.
All right, maybe we'll bring the kids on vacation.
Yeah, that sounds good. Come visit us at Lake Norman.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me on the podcast. And we will put up on our website links to your website and your social media accounts so people can find more about you. Early voting has already started for the primary, right?
Yes. Early voting started on April 19th. It goes to May 5th, and then primary day is May 8th.
All right. Excellent. Well, good luck. We'll be rooting for you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Welcome to Film Roast.
Hey guys, I'm Julia.
And I'm Hannah, and we're the co-hosts of Film Roast.
We're two overcaffeinated and underqualified friends talk about movies.
That's right. So, if you're into film factoids, semi-terrible celebrity impressions, and keeping up on movies both new and old, then check us out.
You can follow Film Roast on Instagram and Twitter at Film Roast Show or on Facebook at facebook.com/Film Roast.
Cheers and happy roasting!
I'm here in this segment with Nicole Beatty, who is running for the Michigan House District 40. Hello, Nicole.
Hey, Carly.
So thanks for joining me. Could you start by telling us just a little bit about your background and why you're running for office?
So I am a mom of two. They're 4 and almost 7, and have been a registered dietitian. I've worked in healthcare for the better part of the last 15 or more years, and never imagined I would have been running for office. But about 3 years ago, one of my colleagues was shot and killed at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. He was a cardiac surgeon, and he was killed by a patient's son in the clinic of the hospital where we had worked together. And many of my friends and colleagues were tasked with taking him to the operating room and breaking the news to his family. And that incident really touched our family very deeply. And so, I started doing work with Moms Demand Action, which is a gun violence prevention organization, just because I felt like I had to do something. And, thought I was sort of politically involved and engaged before, but this sort of let me interact with my lawmakers at a different level. And one of the first things we did together was attend a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, and we were opposing a bill that would have allowed loaded weapons in schools and hospitals and churches and bars and other sensitive locations. And the whole room was filled with opposition. A couple of people were testifying for, but, along somewhere in the middle of testimony, someone had to go on the panel, and they just voted the bill out along party lines and said to us, well, you can keep testifying so it'll be on the record, but we passed the bill out. And it was just so like, well, wait, what about all the people here in this room? This is the only place the public has to lend their voice to lawmakers about this bill, and you've just made it a show, And then I went to my state rep and I said, listen, the Senate is going to hear this bill on guns in schools and hospitals, and I don't think they should be either, and neither does my district. I'm pretty sure I know a ton of parents, and nobody thinks this is a good idea. And he was kind of like, well, I don't have a opinion about that bill. And I felt like it was really not partisan and our voice wasn't being represented. And around the same time in Michigan, everyone's heard of the Flint water crisis. Teachers were walking out of their schools in protest. It was just being a parent in that Michigan made me think about, what if you were making your kids drink poison water for dinner? And, one day I just got fed up and I looked at my husband and I said, do you think I can run for office? And he was like, okay. So I Googled how to run for office and was lucky enough to get accepted into the Emerge Michigan program, which is a program that recruits and trains Democratic women. And I actually ran on the ballot in 2016 against the incumbent, who's a pretty well-elected guy. Over 90% of third-term incumbents are reelected. So everyone was like, you'll never win. It's a Republican seat. Don't run. And so I did anyway, and was really able to engage my community on issues like gun safety and public education and, supporting families and professional families in the workplace. And, was able to pick up about 3% over any other Democratic candidate in history. And this was against a well-liked incumbent. So that was really exciting and showed that my message was really resonated with the district. So because of term limits, my opponent cannot run again. and that means we're going to choose someone new. And I think in this political environment, people are really anxious for change, and we're really excited because we think we have a really great shot at this seat.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear about your colleague, but that's an incredible story of that sort of thing driving you to action. So what does your district look like? Where in Michigan is this? And what are the kinds of issues that really resonate with people there?
We are in kind of the greater Metro Detroit area. We're in Oakland County, which is the only county actually in Michigan that's really been experiencing population growth. So we're certainly seeing demographics shift over the last several years. I live in a sort of affluent, very educated district. There's a lot of professionals and business owners in my district. And for the most part, we've leaned Republican, but when you talk to the district, they really feel like they vote for the candidate and are independents at heart. Although the Republicans have been the home team, they were very adverse to sort of a Trump Republican. And so for the first time at the top of the ticket, the Democrat won. So Hillary Clinton won about 54% of the vote in my legislative district, and that's a first. We're sort of literally the home of Mitt Romney, where he was born and raised. So, I don't know, they were that kind of voter. But what's interesting is, Democrats, unlike Republicans, haven't always played very hard in every seat, maybe because we don't have the money to do so. But now we're starting to realize that has left us without a bench of leadership. And so, going out and engaging as a Democrat in this community was really interesting because I'd knock on doors and people would say to me, you know what, I really like what you're saying and I'm totally with you. I've never voted for a Democrat before. Are you sure this isn't a pretty Republican message? And I would think to myself in my head, I'm talking to you about gun reform and like paid maternity leaves and giving more money to our public education system. This is probably the most progressive stuff you've heard on the doors, but it really demonstrated to me that neighbor to neighbor, unlike what we were feeling in our sort of media world, that we were on very opposing sides, that we actually all wanted the same things. And the things that I'm hearing over and over, both last campaign and this campaign, is that we want a safe community to live in. We want really great public education system for our kids and for our property values. You can usually tie all of these back to economics as well. And that we want infrastructure that's updated. We want roads that stop killing our cars, and we want water that we are assuring is clean and safe for our kids. And I think those are messages that have bipartisan support, and those are the things we're talking about most.
So I think of Michigan as sort of a bluish-purple state, but right now it has the Republican trifecta with a single-party government, and it looks like both the State House and the State Senate are pretty heavily Republican. What do you think sort of explains that discrepancy between sort of how we view Michigan and it being fairly close in presidential elections and this kind of really lopsided state government?
I think that the way we vote and the way we draw our districts has a lot to do with that. And we're kind of in the midst of a huge fight against political gerrymandering, because if you don't know, every 10 years after the census, the legislature is who decides how to draw the lines. So when there's population growth or loss, we want to make sure all of the districts are relatively the same size. But we've been able to kind of rig that system through computer modeling to make sure that whoever's in control at the time the districts are drawn is who draws the lines to favor them. So, we have sort of a case in federal court to look at our districts for gerrymandering. We have a ballot proposal that's going on the ballot, hopefully in 2018, which would develop a third party, like a neutral party to draw lines at redistricting time. So it's become something that's really been noticeable in our legislature because, like you said, we're a very purple state. We're sort of 50-50. We have two Democratic senators, which are, when we are electing people at the statewide offices, it's really sort of a 50-50 split, but yet the Republicans control so much of our legislature just sort of based on the way the lines are drawn. So for many years, we actually saw that total votes for the state house, there was more Democratic votes than there were Republican votes. But still, the way that we vote and the way the lines are drawn is that that still resulted in maybe 2/3 of our legislature being Republican, even though we got more than 50% of the votes.
Yeah, that seems problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe the filing deadline in Michigan was just a couple days ago. Is that right?
That's right. So Tuesday.
And so are you opposed in the primary?